right, welcome to the Sports Guys. Another great episode for you tonight. We are only a little over an hour after the end of the selection show for March Madness. This is what we call bracketology, which is a little bit more art than science. But tonight, Rob and Cole Houck from the Open Throne podcast are going to join us. How are you guys doing?
I'm doing really good. It's the best time of year. I've been waiting for this since it ended, last late April. So I'm just really excited to be on, talk about it. 68 teams, only one comes out in a month after basketball. Nothing like it, really.
Yeah, thanks for joining. And I know, Cole, that you and I were chatting a little bit off air that we none of us have really had a lot of opportunity to analyze this bracket very much, and that's one of the reasons we wanted to go to air. We wanted to have a really fresh take tonight, something that we haven't really thought totally about, but what our initial reaction was. So, how you doing, Robbie?
Doing great. Real excited. This is one of the best times of the year, and March Madness never disappoints. It's not like a bad Super Bowl or something where you're just not sure. You know that it's going to be awesome. There's so much good basketball right now because NIL kept players in the league in college. This is so good. There's so many good matchups. It's great.
So I'm the rotating chair this year. We have a different chair at our office that rotates and does the office pull, and it's actually on me this year. So I have to print out a bunch of brackets tomorrow and go distribute to about 120 people. So that's going to be interesting to manage. But any initial reactions, Cole, to the bracket as it came out and as you watched the selection show?
Oh man. My instant reaction was about very NC State related. I'll talk a little more about that a little later. But yeah, I was glad we made the tournament first time in a little while. Will Wade's first year, but I was pretty disappointed with where we were. I like our spot in the bracket, but I don't like being in the first four that we are right now.
I understand. Anything else that you saw immediately that you thought about?
Yeah, Purdue getting into the two seed. I thought a lot of the ones and two seeds going into this were pretty secure, but obviously Purdue beating Michigan today and winning that very solid Big Ten conference they got this year, it does make sense for them to jump somebody. I think they jumped either Michigan State or Illinois, which makes
Mhm.
sense. They played them or they beat them, got further in that Big Ten tournament. So I understand.
Mhm.
It's a little bit surprising, but it makes sense logically.
I was a little surprised with that one, and I was surprised with our Virginia Cavaliers jumping from the four to the three. They've been pegging them as a four
Yeah.
for a long time, but I think that they had such a good showing against Duke and really were tied with less than 2 minutes left and could have had that game and just made a couple mistakes at the end, and they went ahead up to the three line. So I like that. Robbie, anything that hit you
Yeah.
right away?
I was pleased with Virginia going up to three, but doesn't mean much after the first round or whatever. But um, when I analyzed the brackets, I kind of thought I went to the Duke bracket and I was like, "Ooh, that's a rough one." And then I
It
went
is.
over to the Arizona one. I'm like, "That's a rough one." And then I went over to the Michigan. I'm like, "Oh, I don't know. Like, there's a lot of potential there." So what I'm trying to say is, my initial instinct was Duke's in a really rough division, and it's like the group
Yeah.
of death or whatever. But then I think they got it pretty balanced, actually.
I think Duke has the hardest bracket. The reason being that anybody who has Michigan State in their bracket, it doesn't matter what year it is, doesn't matter what their ranking is, Michigan State always gets there. I also look at Houston that way. Anybody who has Houston in their bracket, it's a tough bracket, no matter what your seating is. So I think you're right. I think Duke has the hardest bracket. I think
But
that you'll see in my bracket a little bit later, they do get knocked off in my bracket because I think Duke has some injuries right now, and I think they're a little bit vulnerable, as you saw.
I think there's a lot of legitimate teams that could go on a run here. Quality teams in the top eight or so, that really could pull something off. And so I don't think it's easy to say right now what an easy path is. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, okay, playing Prairie View might not be the same as playing Arizona, but do you want to play Florida? Do you want to play Illinois? Do you want to play
Not really.
Arkansas? Do you want to play St. John's?
Yeah, I mean, Cole and I were just having a debate on over
I
a
mean,
couple of teams off air. We were talking about Iowa State. How good are they? I
yeah,
mean, they're an awfully good team.
yeah.
So
I was looking at their defensive numbers. I mean, there's a lot of good teams in this tournament. Like, it's going to be fun.
yeah, I agree. So Cole, last year we had all chalk for the most part. We had very few upsets. We ended up with all four number one seeds in the Final Four, which never happens. It hadn't happened in 28 years. And what are your thoughts this year? Are we going to get another chalk tournament? We're going to get a couple kind of surprising teams in there, maybe an 11, maybe a 7.
I mean, I hope it's not as chalky as it was last year. Me and Rob were talking about that earlier today because I saw him while he was doing some yard work, and he said that he enjoyed. Correct me if I'm wrong, Rob, but you said that you enjoyed it being as chalky as it was for the most part because it
Yeah.
was pretty much guaranteed us to have a good product when it comes to the Final Four. The best of
Hmm.
the
Yeah.
best teams playing against each other, and I understand that to an extent, and it was a good product. I enjoyed watching it. It was all good teams left. You don't want to see somebody like you said before, a Florida Gulf Coast or somebody who doesn't belong, doesn't deserve to be there. But I think that kind of goes against what the spirit of March Madness is, where you never know who's
Me
going to
too.
win. And I prefer stuff like that. Even if it means somebody wins by 15 in the Final Four that shouldn't be there, I prefer the excitement of the upset team and the underdog getting there than it
Me
being as
too.
chalky as it was,
Me
personally.
too.
I l-
I'm with,
okay,
I'm
so
with Cole.
let me clarify. You got it basically right what I said. What I mean is I am one of the first to sign up for lots of first round and maybe even second round upsets. I love it. It's the most exciting thing when, you're flipping around game to game to game. You're at work, which shouldn't check on this stuff at work unless you can get away with it. But you're at work, you're flipping between these 32 games or whatever you're looking at, and all of them are coming down to the wire. Prairie View is up on, Kansas, and you're like, no way. And so I love the upsets early, but I've we have all seen the underdog Cinderella story make it too far, and they get into the late rounds and then they get annihilated after pulling off some huge upset, and then they go into the Elite Eight and they get bulldozed by 30. And that's not exciting to watch a team that shouldn't be there get blown away. I love the upsets, and then by the Sweet 16, I want to see chalk again. I want to see the top teams in there. I would love to see, maybe two or three seeds. It doesn't have to be a one seed, but I'd like to see the top teams playing in the Final Four.
I like seeing two number ones, a number 3, and a number 11. That's what I like. I like there to be a mix of Cinderella because it just makes it way more interesting. For the
What
casual fan, they don't want
what
all.
number, let me ask you this. What number 11 do you think stands a chance against Arizona?
Well, I'm not saying that this year. I'm just giving you an example that I liked
Okay,
having a little bit of
but but that
Cinderella.
is but that is my point, is that there's no 11 that exists that really is most likely going to give the top guys
You
a
can't
run.
tell me
So,
that everyone in America didn't love to see Phi Slamma Jamma lose to a very lowly seeded NC State team that was, 20 and 15 that year.
oh, it
That
was
was that
amazing.
was that was the greatest thing I've ever seen in this tournament. So, that's what people want. They want to see
Oh, I
something really
agree.
magical.
But Tom,
And
that's happened kind of once in our lifetime.
I know, I'm just saying that we want to see that, and we want March Madness to be madness.
I
Yeah.
think my favorite memory of March Madness was the year where all the seeds were like it was like maybe 1 3 seed and then a couple sevens and eights. Do you guys remember that? It was the UConn, the Miami year about a decade
Hmm.
ago or so.
Hmm.
That's in my mind the
Yeah.
perfect storm for all this. Now, obviously, that's also probably once in a lifetime thing, but that's what I'm personally looking for when it comes to March Madness results. Have a team or two in there that should be there for sure, and everybody expect to be there,
Hmm.
but have at least one, maybe even a couple teams that nobody really saw coming.
Now, do I want in the Final Four? Do I want the 11 seed to be in the final? Probably not. I'd probably rather see the two number one seeds go at it. But it's just I think that madness needs to be a little bit of madness, and we just didn't get that last year.
I could take some poor seeded teams or low seeded teams making it to like just to the Sweet 16 or something. But I really want the best teams in there at the end, and they don't have to be number ones, but just the obviously the hottest teams in the tournament and the best teams that had really good seasons. That's for me, that's the best March Madnesses there is, other than Virginia going all the way, which only has happened once.
I think
That
it's
was the
probably
greatest March Madness of all time that I've seen, but that was
I
because
think
I'm
it's
biased.
I think it's probably 50-50. I think 50% of people agree with Cole and me, and I think 50% agree with you, Robbie. And I know who else agrees with you, and that is the people that run the NCAA. They want the chalk,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
what it does is
No,
it creates much
but
more
I
rating.
I love the upsets early. Like that's the best part of the whole tournament, really.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing else like it in sports.
That's true. That's very
Nothing.
true.
I mean, so
Well, I will tell you, I do have a couple of upsets we'll go over when we show my bracket. I'm sure you guys have a couple too, so it'll
yep,
be really
you
fun
got
to
you
see.
got to pick some upsets.
And what's funny is that the upsets you and Cole and I have picked probably won't happen, and there'll probably be a couple that we didn't pick that do happen, and that's what makes it really interesting in the first weekend. So we will see what happens there. You guys ready to go take a look at what happened today?
Yeah.
Mm.
Here we go. Let's do it. All right, well, let's do a shout out to our newest sponsor, and that is DoorDash. We're really happy to have DoorDash as part of the Sports Guyz family. I actually used it 2 nights ago when I came home from our ski trip, and I had a great time ordering from DoorDash. They got here in 35 minutes. You can contact them on their online app. You can contact them on their website. They're really, really fast, and they're really efficient, and the service is great. Robbie, what do you think of DoorDash?
Not only do we use it for convenience sake, but there are a lot of times when we use it for bigger shoppings. You forget one or two things at the store, or you have no time. Like tonight, I just used it about 10 minutes ago. Needed two things and don't have time to go to the store. And it couldn't be easier. You can do a whole bunch of series of things. You can look up by product. You can look it up by store that you want to use. It's so easy to use. It's so convenient. The fees are very reasonable. It just costs a few dollars for me to tack on for the convenience. It's really a fantastic service, and I just we love it. And then we have game nights sometimes. We'll just need more salsa, and actually we get our waters that way. We'll do one of our local stores that we really like. We'll dial them up and pull that up, and we'll order a huge stash of waters. And before you know it, it's sitting on our front porch, and it's just so good. And I bring them all in, and then we have water for the next week and a half.
That's fantastic. You know, it's cool.
Yeah,
They started as a food delivery service, and they're the best at that, and they're by far the most popular.
fantastic.
But
Yeah,
they now do, like you said, do groceries. I have a neighbor who's the neighbor to my left in my neighborhood, and every single time she does a huge shopping, we're talking like $250 or more, she has DoorDash go pick it up for
yeah,
her. She doesn't even have
yeah.
to go pick it up. So she orders it
All some
online, and then they go pick it up, and they bring it right to her door.
all summer we order DoorDash to the pool. Pizzas arrive. When we have friends over, constantly everyone's just door dashing and has dinners arriving, pastas from, Noodles and Company or whatever. And it's just so cool. And it's such a good idea and such a great service. The way they do it is simple and easy, and it's just the best. I mean, it's so good.
So, guys, try DoorDash tonight. You can check them out at
All right.
DoorDash.com or go download the app on your phone and order, and you will absolutely love the service.
Yeah, you're gonna love it.
See you next time. All right, guys. So here is the last four in, first four out. This is always debated every single year by all the fans that are out there about, who should have been in, who shouldn't have been in. Are they rated too high? They're rated too low. But wanted to get, Cole, your take on last four in and first four out, and how would you shuffle this deck a little bit?
Well, first off, to put NC State to the side for a second, I think these teams that got in deserve to get in for the most part. Obviously, there's a lot of controversy going around Miami of Ohio. I think they were pretty much locked in to get in here after going 31-0 in the regular season. So I'm not too concerned about that. Say whatever you want. They needed to be here, so I'm okay with it for the most part. I like a couple teams over there in the first four out. Like Oklahoma's been really good recently.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the teams that are over there probably deserve to get in. About, I mean, maybe you could switch Oklahoma with Texas or Oklahoma with SMU, but I like who's got in for the most part. I think they deserve to be there. And Auburn's really good. So Oklahoma's looked really good last couple games, last probably month or so, but Auburn lost too many games. They're only one game above 500, and Oklahoma didn't start the season too good. So they had too big of a hill to climb.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think I would have put Oklahoma in over Texas. I think Oklahoma finished the year strongest out of all eight of these teams. NC State actually lost, I think it was 9 out of their last 11 or something like that. So they really didn't finish strong. So I think the fact that they made the field was really good. I was hoping they would. But I like Oklahoma in place of Texas. I think Texas had just an okay season. And really, maybe SMU shouldn't have gotten in potentially for Oklahoma. So, again, I think Oklahoma is the hottest team out of these 8. And I agree with you, Cole. I do think Miami of Ohio, although they are ranked 64th, very low, didn't really play anybody the entire season. I think the fact they went 31-0 in the regular season should count for something. So I'm okay with them kind of being the last team into the tournament. What about you, Robbie?
Yeah, Cole, you and I were talking earlier about Miami of Ohio, and Kevin Keats made a good point. He said, "Do you know how hard it is to go 31-0, coaching a team that is going, has students that are going through midterms on the road, your best player is sick with the flu, etc. To win 31 in a row and never drop the ball is spectacular and is a special achievement and deserves to be rewarded with a tournament. Um, of course, their schedule is questionable and certainly needs to be scrutinized. But at the end of the day, 31-0 in any division should be rewarded with a tournament spot out of the
Exactly.
64.
I completely
Uh,
agree.
and they had a bad game in their opening round tournament game, but that was definitely unfortunate. But I think that you look at the body of work and it's pretty impressive to
And then
never drop the ball.
And then Robbie Cole made this point about Auburn. I mean, they do have a strong case on the wins side because they had 5 group of 4 wins, which were really strong. They have by far the strongest resume in terms of their wins out of these 8, but they just had too many losses. 7-11 in the SEC is just not good enough, in my opinion.
Yeah.
They also
They were 12th in the SEC, and
Yeah.
SEC had 10 teams go in.
right.
You
Yeah.
can't hope for 12 teams to go from your division. But I
And
think
they also lost 2 of their last 3 down the stretch, including to
yeah,
Mississippi State, which was a really bad loss. They just could not have lost that game. And so
yeah,
I just think that they were close, but just didn't get in. And I think it's right.
they were definitely close. They were on that bubble, but they had too many losses. They were one game above 500. That's mediocre. 12th in their division, not good enough. And yeah, they had spectacular wins. That means that they got really juiced up to play the big boys, and they beat some of them, which is really good achievements, but not quite enough when you're not consistent enough. You don't get rewarded for the tournament. So
I want to know,
it,
how did the ACC get 8 teams in, which is good. That's much better than last year's 4 teams.
mm,
But how did we go from we thought we were going to get 9 in to barely getting 8 in, and 2 of the teams get in the last 4 in have to do with the play-in tournament?
It's
Um,
uh
People
it's the way the
disappointed.
last 2 teams finished for the year. I mean, NC State had won very little games in the season. I think SMU lost at least 4 in a row going into the conference tournament.
Hmm.
And the teams that needed to win that were on the bubble, there was multiple of them. It was Cal, it was Stanford, it was Virginia Tech. I think even Wake Forest was somewhere in that conversation. All of those teams lost very early on. If they got to
yeah,
the semis, maybe they'd have a chance, but they're not even on the bubble here today because they lost so early in that conference tournament.
And what are your
good
thoughts
point.
about this trend that teams are immediately saying we're not going to play in the NIT like Virginia Tech did? They said basically our season's over. We're not going to play in the NIT. Do you think that's the right decision for these teams? I mean, it's going to kill that tournament. You're not going to have an NIT if nobody plays in it.
I haven't looked too much into who said no to the NIT or who's got invited. I'll look at that a little bit later. I mean, like you said, this is about an hour after the broadcast of the picking teams, so
Yeah,
I haven't looked too
I'm
much
just
into
saying
that yet.
generally. I'm just saying generally, if you're a team like Virginia Tech, why wouldn't you want another 2 weeks of playing and practice for your team to develop your younger guys,
I
that
mean,
kind of
why
thing?
did Notre Dame say no to the bowl game? It's
Same
just
thing. It's
they
just
want
dumb.
they have higher aspirations than the second best tournaments. I understand it to an extent, but it feels I don't like it for the seniors the same way I didn't like it for the Notre Dame guys. Like it's the same principles apply to that where
Yeah.
I understand why you do it, but there's other factors that probably need to be involved in this decision that just won't be at all. And that leads to decisions like Virginia Tech made to just say no to the tournament altogether.
Yep, that's right.
It's like any attention is good attention. You know that saying. Any exposure you have, I think, is good. If you have an opportunity to go win that tournament, you go and you do it. You want your seniors to play every game they can. You want to reward, and maybe you use it as an opportunity to play the freshmen that have been sitting a lot
You
and
want to play
learning
your
all year.
freshman
You want
point
to see
guard.
if they can do it, you know? So
Yeah,
there's so many reasons to play, and I can't think of any that are reasonable to not play.
that's right.
Because your little feelings got hurt, that's not a good reason. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
There's
I
an
agree.
opportunity to make money. There's an opportunity to make money for your conference. There's an opportunity to win the tournament and get your freshman kids mentally used to winning and go into the next year with a little bit of momentum. There's
Yep.
way too many reasons to mention all of them, but you don't not go to tournaments or bowl games when you're invited.
Well, guys, drop us a comment for Cole, Rob, and myself. What you guys think of this last four in, first four out? If you think it was correct, and if you think anybody got jobbed, and if you agree with Cole that NC State is ranked way too low here.
Yeah, hold on. Let me talk
Yeah,
about NC State a little bit before we move
yeah,
on to the
sure.
next thing because I need to get this off my chest somewhere.
Yeah,
Yeah,
So
let's go.
yeah, do
thank
it.
you. Yeah, I thought for sure that this not 100% sure, but I thought a pretty good chance that NC State was going to make this tournament, even when we were in the middle of our losing streak, but after the Carolina game. And I thought we were pretty secure for either like a low 10 seed or a high 11 seed. And I had actually been one preaching for us to be in a low 11 seed because I like Rob, you said this too, where there's about 8 teams that are really good in this tournament. Maybe there, I don't, you can draw a line wherever you want to, but a lot of those 2 seeds and 1 seeds look like they're, to me anyways, look like they're better than threes and fours, at least a little bit, maybe half a tier better. So for the sake of trying to go farther as an NC State fan, I thought it would be better for us if we were an 11 seed. We could beat a 6 seed potentially and then go against one of those 3 seeds that's a little bit worse than the 2 seed if we got the 10, beat the 7, that sort of thing. So I was looking for an 11 seed. This is not what I wanted. I did not want it to be like this. The two 11 seeds that aren't in the play-in games, the first 4 games in Dayton, are both conference tournament champions. It's
Right.
USF, South Florida, and VCU out of the A10. And frankly, I don't understand why there are two conference tournament champions above any of the at-large bids. I feel like in the past, the last couple of years, you have had at-large bids be out of the Dayton games, out of the first 4 games. I feel like something changed so that this wasn't happening. So this is my fault that we were in this game in the first place because I said I wanted to be an 11 seed, but I am not looking forward to playing Texas. The logistics of it are awful. Like we played
Yeah,
Texas, who we already played 3 months
right.
ago, 4 months ago, and lost to at the for the fifth place game in the Maui Invitational in Hawaii,
Yeah.
really, really early on in the season. So that's a rematch. I feel like that's a worse product. And if we do beat Texas in Dayton at 9 o'clock on Tuesday, we go fly to Portland, Oregon to play BYU in the middle of the day Thursday, less than 48 hours later. It's such a bad situation for State to be in,
Or
and I don't know why we weren't a low 10 seed or a guaranteed 11 not be in the play-in games.
Now, Cole, don't be too hard on yourself. It's not because of you that this happened to them.
My fault.
it's
Yeah, it's not your
your
fault.
fault.
Robbie, what do you think? Do you think NC State got jobbed here?
I Yes, a little bit, but I think you could make the case some of these other ones did too, especially Oklahoma. But yeah, I would love for NC State to have not have to play in, but I think they're going to beat Texas. So
I
I
do
think a
too.
lot's changed since Maui.
I like NC State over Texas in this game,
Yeah.
and I think they'll play pretty well on Thursday. They may have a little bit tired legs, Cole, so you may be right about that.
If but
But
for me, if they're fresh, they don't beat BYU.
well,
So
let's be totally frank. There were a couple really big games down the stretch. NC State really needed to win, and they didn't. And they went
yeah,
9 losses and 2 wins down the stretch, and so that really killed them. They were in
yeah,
really good position, just a couple weeks ago. So they had a really bad finish this season. So
yeah. Think
to me,
about
they should be happy that they're in the tournament. I know that doesn't feel good, but they
think
should be
about the
happy.
run they went on when they went to the Final Four. They got hot in the tournament in the ACC tournament, and you need that kind of momentum going forward if you didn't have a spectacular season. If you had a good season, I think Will Wade's first years was very good. I
No,
think he
if I'm NC State, I'm very
did a
excited
nice
about the
job.
low weight era. I'm very excited
Yeah,
about.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think it was really good, and I think that they were right on that cusp, and it's
That
not great, but I think they beat Texas.
that last 3 weeks they got a little nicked up. They had a couple of injuries.
Yeah,
A couple teams figured them out in the ACC and things like that. But I think they're going to be okay. I think they'll win this
yeah,
game. They'll have a chance on Thursday. So,
yeah.
but
They're
yeah,
gonna go up against BYU, and that's gonna be a tough one.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And they
You,
might be a little tired, but I don't think it would matter that much. Like I think,
you called BYU as one of the sleeper teams, Robbie. So yeah, for sure.
yeah, just they have some really good players.
Well, let's go look at the bracket and we'll get you guys' take on it. Here we go. All right, so here is the bracket in the East. Robbie, you talked about the group of death. You got Duke leading off with Siena. You have a Ohio State team that kind of limped down the stretch. You have St. John's, who has just been powering everybody the last couple of weeks and was just fantastic in the Big East tournament.
Mhm.
Playing a Northern Iowa team that got in by winning their tournament. Uh, Kansas really had a lot of big group of five wins this season, so they had one of the better resumes coming in. Cal Baptist had the craziest way of getting in the tournament I've ever seen, where the team they were playing had a lob dunk to win the game, and the guy missed it by banging it off the back of the rim. Most miraculous entry into the tournament I've ever seen by Cal Baptist. Louisville limps a little bit into this tournament. I'm a little concerned about them. Matter of fact, I've got them being upset by South Florida in the first round.
Yeah.
I just don't think Louisville's very good this year. Michigan State, if I'm Duke, I just shuddered when I saw them in my bracket. That's the one team you don't want in your bracket. Them and Houston, because they're built for tournament time. They've got a great coaching staff, and they just always perform. And then, of course, you got UConn down there as the number 2 seed. Cole, that was one of the big surprises for me when they announced UConn at number 2, because they had some really bad losses down the stretch and didn't look very good at the end of the year. I was kind of surprised they didn't slip to a 3 or a 4. I'm not. UConn's a good team, but I'm not really thinking they're a major contender this year. So, any thoughts, guys, about the East?
Yeah, I definitely agree with what you said about Tom Izzo and Michigan State. You can never really count them out. However, I kind of feel the same way about UConn and Dan Hurley. I know this team does not look as good, not look like the same team they have been the last, maybe 3 of the last 4 years with Dan Hurley and how good his roster has been. But I can't count him out. I can't. He's proved me wrong too many times.
I agree.
And one of you
Yeah,
guys said this before.
Cole, I've got UConn going to the Sweet 16. So I'm not saying they're getting knocked out in the first round. But what I'm saying is I don't see them as a major contender. That's all I'm saying.
I'm not sure they are either, but I can't count them out for it either. I
Yeah,
have too much faith in Hurley personally. But
yeah, no,
then
he's good.
one of you guys had also said that the East, I guess it was you, Rob, that said the East looks more difficult than the rest of them, at least off of first glance. They have rankings within each division, each like quadrant, I guess you call them, each region. Sorry, within each seeding, excuse me. And you average those out, see which one has the most difficult schedule, which is kind of the most numerically or analytically difficult team in here. And that was the East, which is interesting because Duke was the overall 1 seed. You would think that they would want to have the best team be in the weakest quadrant, but that's not how it
Right.
worked. And I think that's what it
Yeah.
was last year as well.
Because you know what? There's two other teams, Cole, here that Duke should be shuddering about. One of them is St. John's. The way they're playing,
Yeah, I
they
was
can,
gonna say they're one of
they
the
can
hottest
go.
teams in the tournament.
There's no reason St. John's can't make it to the Final Four with the current team that they have. And then the other team is Kansas. Is fantastic this year. So I think there's no question East is by far the strongest and the hardest bracket. And whoever emerges from the East is going to be a major player in the final. That's just how I feel. Anything else, Robbie, you wanted to mention on the East? The group
Just
of
that
death?
St. I think St. John's one of the hottest teams in the tournament, and never count out Michigan State. UConn is the same. I feel the same as Cole. I have a lot of faith in their coach and his ability to bring forward a lot of talent and get a lot out of the guys. And I think Duke has a tremendous amount of talent, but is dealing with some of the injuries that they're gonna get a little healthier here soon. So I think that is a good division, but I really, as I analyze the others, I really don't think there's a big difference. It's not a huge. Some of the World Cup draws that you see where it's group of death is so much hard. One is so much harder than the others. I don't see that kind of discrepancy. I think that there's hot teams and there's good teams in
Yeah,
every single. They did a pretty good job of spreading it out.
I agree. I agree. I'm not saying they're group of death. I was just saying that jokingly. I would say though it is the hardest bracket and is the deepest bracket in terms of
Let me
most
put it one more way. There are teams in each bracket that I could easily see getting a little bit hot and winning the whole national title.
it's possible.
So and it's spread out. They're not all lined up against each other and smashing each other out in the Sweet 16 or something. So I think there's two or three teams in each bracket that could win the whole thing fairly easily if they have these great games back to back. And so that to me that I think that the conference committee did a good job, it looks like.
I think they did a good job. I do think Duke has the hardest path of all the number ones. And to your point that you were making earlier, why wouldn't they want Duke to have the easiest path as the overall number one seed? That's usually how they do it.
But I will say
It's just my opinion. They have the hardest path.
some of the tough teams in Duke's bracket aren't going to play Duke until the Sweet 16 or
True.
they have tough games amongst each other. So,
Right. I was going to say
True.
that too. You talking
you
about
know,
St. John's and Kansas being really good. Dude, they're going to potentially play each other,
yeah.
on Saturday
Yep,
or Sunday.
that's right. No, that's exactly right. We'll see who emerges, right? Let's go take a look at the South. Here we've got Florida as the number one seed. Of course, they really came on. They had a very bad beginning of the year, went 5-4 to start. And everyone had kind of written them off in the SEC and said, well, that's not the same old Florida we're used to. And then they won this huge run. They won 21 out of 22 midseason and just took over the SEC. And so they really, really deserve that number one line. They're really a fantastic team. Definitely one of those teams, Robbie, that can win the whole thing for sure.
Yeah. I'm a
Um,
believer in Florida.
in their bracket, they've got a pretty good Clemson team that had a nice season with Iowa. I think either one of those teams could potentially give them a pretty good game. I don't think they can beat them, but pretty good game. We have a Vanderbilt team that was really surprising this year in this bracket. We have Nebraska that was really maybe the most surprising team in the Big Ten the entire season. They really had a nice season. What's interesting is on the selection show, you saw them talk about Nebraska has never won an NCAA basketball game in the tournament. That's pretty amazing. A school that has that much history has never won a tournament game. So it would be interesting to see if they can get there first. North Carolina, I think, upset alert with no Wilson and a really strong VCU team coming in very pumped up, having won their tournament, and they're playing really good ball. So not necessarily calling it, but I think that I would not be shocked at all if you see VCU pull one off against Carolina there. Illinois had an incredible start. It looked like they might win the Big Ten at the beginning of the year. Then they had kind of a lull in the midseason where they lost a bunch of games, and then the last couple of weeks they've pulled themselves back together and they're really playing great ball again. So I would not be surprised if Illinois makes some damage. Texas A&M comes in limping. A couple of their really good players are hurt, so I'd say real potential they might get knocked out right away. And then, of course, Houston, of course, is always a team every year that they've gone to 4 out of the last 5 Final Fours. Let's just put it that way. So you've got a team that is always ready to go deep. So,
And
guys,
that's my point about the brackets being pretty strong all the way across.
yeah. So, guys, thoughts about the South? Let's start with Cole.
Yeah, I think the South is definitely worse than the East is, but I think this is also a very strong region you got here. There's a couple teams that are really interesting that aren't usually as good as they are. Looking at the 4-5 here of Nebraska and Vanderbilt, both these teams are not usually like in this position. Nebraska, I watched them a lot of the last few years, and they've been fun as a mediocre kind of maybe make the tournament, probably be an NIT team or just barely out. Vanderbilt kind of the same thing. Their turnaround in football and basketball has really been fantastic to
Been
watch. Really like their
remarkable.
coach over there, first year guy, I believe. So they're fun. A bunch of fun stories. St. Mary's in here too. They're always kind of interesting. They're always in the tournament. They have the same team every year. Kelvin Sampson, I think, is from Pembroke, right around,
Yeah,
not too far from here. So I have
that's
a lot
right.
of respect for him out of Houston. Like you said, they're always making it deep as well. Just should be a lot of fun. But Florida's been fantastic, like you guys said. They are so tall, they rebound like crazy. They play a really good brand of basketball, and they might be the team to beat, to be honest, the way they've been playing the last month or two.
Yeah, I
They
mean
don't have a weakness.
they're one of the favorites to win the whole thing. There's no question. They're really, really good.
They don't have a weakness.
This is a good bracket, but none anywhere close to the East. It's not the group of death field. There's a
I
lot
would
of
say it's a little
good
close.
good teams, but I see, it's a Florida and Houston show. One of those
I think
teams will,
Florida and Houston could win the whole thing.
yeah.
And I also think that Nebraska is one of the hotter teams, and Vandy's gone on a nice run. Um,
And I think Illinois plays a brand of basketball that works in the tournament, and I think they could be really tough. So,
Iowa's tough.
mhm.
They're 12th in the country in point in I'm sorry, no, that's Iowa State. Iowa's 17 in the country in defense. So
Hmm.
Iowa's fun to watch. I like
they're a
watching
top.
Iowa a lot. We'll talk about that a little later.
They
Yeah.
are. They really are. And I agree with
Oh,
you about St. Mary's. St. Mary's is always one of those teams that
yeah.
scares people in the first round or two.
They are
They're
good in the tournament.
really
I'm
well.
not
Yeah,
sure why, but they are.
yeah, they are. So agree with that. Yeah, the South's tough. Not as tough as the East, but tough. Looking up here at the West, we got Arizona, the number 2 overall seed after Duke in terms of the ones. You got a Villanova team that's usually much more highly ranked. They had a lot of weird losses this year. I'd say upset alert with Utah State potentially. Watch that game really closely. You have a Wisconsin team that had a pretty good season, but really didn't finish the season very well. And they're playing a really hot High Point team. This is one of my major upset alerts. I really feel like High Point could knock them off. Wisconsin doesn't score very many points compared to some of the other teams. And so if they get into one of those situations where they can't hit a shot, you might see a High Point upset here. Arkansas just won the SEC tournament, so they're playing really, really well right now. They're kind of a scary team you don't really want to play. The only team in their sub bracket I see possibly beating them is Arizona. So I kind of see a Arizona-Arkansas situation there. And then, of course, you have BYU at the very bottom of this bracket. Thoughts about the West overall? Gonzaga as well, Purdue, and Cole, your team, Miami.
Yeah, I actually believe this to be the weakest out of the quadrants, out of the regions, maybe even noticeably. There's a few teams in here that I think are overrated or I just don't really see going very far. Arizona is Arizona. I don't really, they speak for themselves. They are amazingly deep. They're fun to watch. They don't shoot threes, which has not been a problem this entire year. So who am I to say it might be a problem come this time, in March? But I'm really curious what it looks like. I don't have a lot of faith in Wisconsin. I also think I have High Point beating them right now. Arkansas is always interesting with Calipari. I can't really go against that guy as well, but I've not loved them. They looked really good in the SEC tournament, but before that, they had ups and downs. I don't like BYU that much. I think without Richie Saunders, because he got hurt a little bit earlier in the year, I think they have a lot of weaknesses. I think it's too dependent on the freshman who's very, very good. AJ Dubance is going to be a lot of fun to watch. It depends how NC State or Texas, whoever wins that game, is going to guard him. I have plans for NC State if they do make it past Texas, but that'll be a little bit iffy.
You
Gonzaga's
know,
always in the West region. They're fun to watch. Miami's a really good team. I love their brand of basketball. And Purdue's pretty much always here as well. But I said a couple of those teams, like I think Gonzaga may be a little overrated. Purdue's in that same conversation. I think this is when I saw this as NC State fan, besides being upset about the first four, I was actually very happy about the way everything filed out for us
I
as far
guess
as
you were.
potentially
I
making a
guess you were.
run.
Yeah. Yeah, and the
Yeah.
BYU player, he may be the second best or maybe even the best player in the country. And I know Rob believes so.
Yeah, I
But
think he's the
but
best player in the country.
but the reason they've had so many losses this year, like you said, there's not much around him. He really has kind of an incomplete team. And
Yeah.
they had a lot
There's
of losses in the Big 12 because it's just kind of him and everybody just double and triple teams him
there's a
basically.
couple good players on the team, but they don't have enough depth to go very far.
Hmm. Yeah, agreed.
But the band says enough to carry you sometimes.
And then the way Purdue's playing right now and the way they played in the Big Ten tournament, I mean, they're looking like a number 2 seed. They really are.
Yeah.
So, it's looking to me in this bracket, I'd say the teams that are scariest are Purdue, Arkansas, and Arizona. Those are my top 3 teams in that bracket.
Yeah.
And totally agree with you, Cole. I think this is, out of the 3 we've reviewed so far, the weakest. I'd put it as
I agree with that.
East, South, West, and then Midwest. That's kind of the way I
Yeah,
have
the
been
West
ranked.
is definitely the weakest,
Yeah.
except for Arizona. I think
Except for
they're just
Arizona, yeah. And so that's
silent.
why there's a lot of people scratching their head. Why did Arizona get such an easy path? I mean, that's kind of the argument over the past hour.
I do also
Yeah.
want to say there's a lot of teams that have to go really far. I mean, NC State obviously is one of these teams that have to travel, but like Miami, Purdue, Wisconsin, a lot of these teams, High Point, obviously you're gonna, let these teams, the lower seeded teams go wherever, but there's a lot of teams that aren't on the West to be in the West region. That happens pretty frequently, but I feel like it may be worse this year than usual.
And I like Miami. It's not that I don't. They were one of the better teams in the ACC this year. I was really surprised how much Virginia beat them by and how much they dismantled them. They looked kind of slow in that game. I mean, Virginia, I know, is one of the
Yeah.
better teams, but Miami just looked slow, and I just don't know if that's going to translate against one of these really top tournament teams. But
I
we'll
think
see.
Miami had a very good season. I think that Virginia game they did not play well, but that's the point back to the 31-0. Teams have a bad game sometimes, and it doesn't speak that much about your team. What you don't want to see is the trends. Some of these teams that slipped into the bubble or barely made it or whatever, they had bad trends. It wasn't just a game.
Yeah,
Um,
that's right.
the other thing I would say is that uh, I this is the bracket where I'm calling for the most upsets, which tells you that there's a lot of vulnerable top
Hmm.
seed teams that are overrated. Like you said, they're beatable.
Yeah,
And
that's right.
so, you know, when you have chalk, that means that the big boys are just beating down everyone. And in this division,
Hmm.
it's it, I think there's gonna be some upsets. This is really where the upsets are gonna happen because those teams aren't very good.
I did want to call out a couple of North Carolina teams. One is Queens University. They're playing Purdue in round
Hmm.
one, which is going to hurt. But I just wanted to,
Let's
congratulate them
go.
being here
Yeah,
in
let's go.
Charlotte. I mean, they've been playing basketball 75 years and they get in for the first time. I mean, that just has to feel so good
It's
for
so
Queens
exciting for
University.
all that hard work to pay off.
They
Think
finally
about
got
all
in.
the boosters that had to come together and the recruiting to try and recruit people to go to Queens University.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Just
when I moved here 28 years ago to Charlotte, they were a Division three team. So to think
yeah,
about how far they've come, they went to two and then they went to one and now they're in the tournament. It's pretty
it's very
impressive.
exciting. It's very
I got to give a
exciting.
shout out too before you get to the other team is that in the Atlantic Sun, which is the conference that Queens is in, and that I
Yeah,
watched that conference final game. It was really early
yeah,
on before a lot of them had started. They
yeah.
were playing Central Arkansas. Central Arkansas had a guy that went off for 50 points and went into overtime, and they lost because Queens had a guy who hit 10 threes. It was a super fun game to watch. So that was just I really enjoyed that a ton.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That was an awesome game. The other team I wanted to call out was High Point. I mean, High Point's here in North Carolina. They
Yeah.
sometimes get in the tournament. They've actually been pretty good the last 5 years and had a pretty nice run. But I just want to again to congratulate that small school up there near Greensboro, and they're
And
having a nice run.
along
And I
those
think
lines, there's a lot of good basketball minds who I respect a lot who are calling for High Point to be one of those upset teams. So
100%.
the fact that
Yeah.
they're going is maybe not where their story ends. They might be able to go on a tiny little run and at least make it one more game. So that's really exciting is if you have a legitimate shot at advancing. Making it to the tournament and knowing you're going to get annihilated is great for your as a reward for your players and but if you have an actual shot at upsetting somebody, that's pretty cool.
Do you think that guy from Queens University, Cole's going to have 10 threes against Purdue?
No, no, they play way too good
Probably
a
not.
defense,
Probably
unfortunately. But it would
not.
be
Yeah.
fun to watch. I think
Yeah.
Purdue would still probably win anyways, to be honest, too. But yeah, I shout
Yeah.
out to Queens University. I'm really
Yeah.
happy to see them here like you guys are.
Me too.
Good stuff.
Let's go take a look at the Midwest. It leads off with Michigan, number one. They've had an unbelievable year. There were a couple times this year they actually were number one in the country. They did fade a little bit at the end of the season and didn't win the Big Ten tournament like everyone thought they would. But I still think they come in as a very dangerous team, a really good team that can beat almost anybody and can go to the Final Four. There's no question. Just below them, there you see St. Louis and Georgia. I think that'll be a really good matchup. Two 8 and 9 teams that'll give themselves a heck of a run. Texas Tech had a great year. They have a couple guys who are banged up right now. They're kind of injured and not a complete team right now, which is one of the reasons I'm picking Akron to upset Texas Tech in round one. Akron's actually a really good team. Alabama comes in as the highest scoring offense in all of NCAA. They're number one in Division One in
Mhm.
scoring against
Yep.
Hofstra. They score 95 points a game.
Do you know who
Tennis,
number two is, Tom?
who's that?
Miami of Ohio.
There
Hmm.
you go. Tennessee had a really nice season. They did have a couple losses that were really surprising at the end of the year, so they kind of faded a little bit as well. Our Virginia Cavaliers with a really nice showing against Duke in the final. They were tied with less than 2 minutes left, couldn't get it done, but come in really on a high. This year's been really very surprising for us Cavalier fans, and the fact that they went all the way up to a 3 seed. I think they come in as one of the hottest teams in the tournament as well. Kentucky against Santa Clara, I think it's going to be a really good matchup. It's going to be fun to watch. Santa Clara has some juice this year, and they did really well in their conference tournament. And then one of the really surprising teams was Iowa State. They almost pulled off a major upset in their conference tournament, almost won the whole thing. And they've just been fantastic all year, really consistent, and one of the teams that can play both ends of the court.
Hmm.
So, guys, what do you think about the Midwest?
I think the Midwest is one of the more balanced regions, maybe the most balanced region out of the four that we have here, where there are a couple teams that I think could lose in the first round. Like there are definitely plenty of upsets that I could see happening. But I think
Yeah.
some of the better teams in the entire tournament are also in here too. I think it's a really solid balance where it's like I like Akron a lot too, like you said. A couple teams I think could be overrated. I want to say Tennessee, but they are a 60. That's probably where they belong. I thought they may be higher than that, and they were not. Um, my first reaction to this though was that Virginia's in a very good spot. I think people on the broadcast have said that too. I
I
like
agree.
Virginia to go really far here. I think it could not have been picked any better for Virginia. And I think they have a very, like, even a pretty realistic chance to make the Elite Eight or even the Final Four probably through this bracket.
I think so too. I've got them in the lead eight. Yeah, I think that they could not have had a better draw in the weakest bracket, in my opinion, weakest region, and on a side of the bracket where they wouldn't have to play Michigan until the Elite Eight. That's pretty darn good. Thoughts about this, Robbie? The Midwest?
Yeah, I think again, a very good bracket. Um, I I think so far the West is a little weaker than the other three, but the other three are very strong. Lots of potential national champions coming out of this bracket. If things go right, if somebody gets hot, if you start hitting and playing that slap the floor defense, I see a lot of opportunities for teams to advance into that Final Four area.
Do you agree that this region has the most potential upsets?
I think, well, I think the West has the most potential upsets, but I do think that there are many opportunities for upsets here. But again, the way I look at a division, look at a region being difficult is that can a national champion come out of it? And if so, how many of those can come out of it? And it's just as strong as the South and maybe very close to the East. So
Well,
it's a it's great.
who are teams in the Midwest you think could be national champs?
National champs,
Hmm.
Michigan, Alabama, if they went on a rampage,
Hmm. I agree.
Virginia would have to shoot well and tighten up the D a little bit, but they have the depth to do it. To get,
Hmm.
you don't get Virginia in foul trouble. They have so many guys they're rotating in that
Hmm.
foul trouble doesn't even factor. And so
And
if
what about
if they're
Iowa State, maybe potentially?
Iowa State definitely is a possibility. I love the way they play defense. I think that there are as many opportunity possible national champions coming out of there as anywhere else.
Hmm. Yeah.
So just the West is a little soft.
West is soft, but I also think Midwest is pretty soft. I think that those are my two lower end brackets, and I think the South and the East are the toughest. So, just my opinion. So, well, guys, we're going to go ahead and take a look at a filled out bracket. I did it about 20 minutes after the selection show was over, so just realized I had not done a lot of analysis here. But let's go ahead and take a look at my first bracket I did. I'm actually in a little bracket group with Cole and Rob, so we're going to kind of monitor each other's picks as we go the next 2 weeks. But you can see here I got Duke winning against Siena. I have Ohio State taking down TCU. That's one of my upset alerts. I would not be surprised at all if TCU wins that game. I think that's really a toss-up, kind of a 1 or 2 point type game. We got St. John's beating Northern Iowa, Kansas winning, South Florida knocking off Louisville as an upset, Michigan State winning, UCLA, and Connecticut. That's my first round in the East. How am I looking so far, guys?
I think I have all of these picks except for TCU. Like you had said, I'm really high on TCU. I think they're one of the hottest teams kind of secretly in the country. I'm also kind of a Big 12 homer for basketball. I like Big 12 a lot, so it doesn't surprise me. I think if TCU was a higher seed, I think if they won more games at the beginning of the year, they'd be a higher seed. They'd probably be a 7 seed or a 6 seed, and they would have a chance to beat a 2 or 3 seed. But I don't think they'd beat Duke. And I also want to give a special shout out to the Missouri Valley Conference. That's where Northern Iowa's from. They are a lot of fun. They do a thing called Arch Madness because they play their conference tournament in St. Louis, right in front of the Arch.
Hmm.
That's where Wichita State was before they moved up to the American, but that's where Bradley and Drake and
Yep.
Murray State, Indiana State, they have a bunch of really fun teams at that conference. Belmont might be
Yeah.
in there too, I'm not sure. So they're very good, but I don't see them beating St. John's.
No, I don't think so either. St. John's are playing really well.
I
So,
actually I have TCU beating Ohio State.
yeah, you know what? It's funny you both mentioned that game, and that's the one I had the hardest time with in this first round. I actually had TCU selected at one point, and then I went back to Ohio State just thinking their guard plays really good. But again, I would not at all be surprised if TCU wins that game.
One thing that's interesting is the stats they showed at the selection show. I don't know if you guys saw the graphic. It said 1, 2, and 3 seeds advance 90.8% of the time. And let's see, nines over eights happens 55% of the time,
Yeah,
which is more than half.
yeah, I'm not surprised.
And 11s over sixes happen 52.5% of the time.
Hmm.
So 11s beating sixes happens more than half the time.
I did not see that. Does
So
that mean that the
that's
11s beat the sixes more often than the sixes beat the 11s?
yes.
Yes, yes,
Wow, I did not know
yep,
So
that.
that's
that's true.
so I've tried to concentrate my upset picks in those spots because
Yeah.
statistically that's where the committees have gotten the picks a little bit the seeding wrong sometimes. Because
and
clearly if
by
that's
the
happening more than half the time, that means that they were seeded incorrectly, even if it looked right on paper. So
I mean,
and by
think
the
about
way,
the psychology about that. Is that the 11 seeds are the best of the best conference tournament mid majors, or they're the teams that just barely got in and they're really fighting for something? Think about NC State a couple of years ago and made that Final Four run. That's why those 11s are there, and that's why they end up beating the sixes more than the tens beat the sevens.
I
yep.
knew about the nines over the eights was more than 50%. I knew about that one. I did not know about the 11s versus the sixes.
I
And I
try to
don't.
concentrate on my upsets in those spots.
Do we know what the stats are for tens versus sevens?
I
If
don't.
that's over.
They didn't
Oh,
list that. It's not
okay.
significantly.
Yeah.
It's pretty much chalk. It's
Yeah.
close to predictable.
Got it. So to finish out my East bracket, I got Duke beating Ohio State. I have St. John's beating Kansas in a really tough game, by the way. I think that'll be one of the best games of the tournament,
Hmm.
St. John's, Kansas. But I have St. John's squeaking by there. And I have St. John's being the team that knocks Duke off. I think Duke is not going to make it all the way for many of the reasons we talked about. I think they're very flawed. And you can see with the two major, tall frontline players that they have out right now, they're just not the same team. So I've got St. John's knocking off Duke. Lower part of this bracket, I got Michigan State beating South Florida. I've got Connecticut beating UCLA and getting to the Sweet 16. And then I've got Michigan State beating Connecticut since we've seen Connecticut really kind of be soft down the stretch. And I think Michigan State's the better team. And then I've got Michigan State beating St. John's to move on. So that's what my East bracket looks like. Anything you guys would change on your East brackets?
I think I also had Michigan State making the Final Four in my East bracket. I'm pretty sure I have Kansas beating St. John's, but I will probably go back and forth on that a ton because that's just a really close matchup in my minds.
It is
I
great
want to
game.
say I hate defending Duke, but I don't think they're very flawed. I think they have a couple flaws, and I think the injuries are going to make those flaws come out a little bit more. There's a reason that they were the number one overall team.
Yeah,
Um, but I think they're going to lose. I think they're not going to come out of this bracket. I'll say that. They're not going to come out of this region. I think it's going to be one of Kansas or St. John's or Michigan State. Don't really
yeah.
believe in UConn 100%, like you said too, but I don't, yeah, I agree with a lot of this for the most part.
I have UConn going to the Sweet 16, which for how they finished the season would be a really good finish for them. So again, I'm not disrespecting them. I'm just saying I think they're going to lose. So
My Sweet 16 is Duke against St. John's, Michigan State against UConn. And out of that, I have Michigan State winning and Duke winning. So I have
okay,
Duke going all the way to the Final Four.
you do okay.
I think that they are second, no, third in the country in defense. They're third, and they have very good offense. So they're one of the best all-around teams, and I'm sorry, they don't have a lot of weaknesses.
It took an unconscious 68% shooting performance to beat Virginia by 4 points. And so I
I
just I
know, but
just think
I
I
agree,
just
but they're able to do that.
I know, but that's not going to happen very often, especially when Cam Boozer goes 3 for 17. I just
No,
don't
I
see it.
agree. But Cam
One of
Boozer
these
is not going to
teams,
go 3 for 7.
I
They,
think
for
one
whatever reason, and Yenso, he kept going in on him. He's not going to do that again. They're going to watch the tape and say, "What were we doing?"
one of these teams, St. John's or Michigan State, one of these teams is going to knock them off. That's just my prediction. We'll see if I'm right or not. We'll find out.
You guys talk about the wrong guy for Duke, in my opinion. I'm not really looking for Cam Boozer. I think he's going to get his no matter what. Even if he has
Yeah.
a bad game, it's still going to be a pretty good percentage. I'm worried about Isaiah Evans. This guy's been fantastic. He's
Yeah,
actually been pretty good
right.
defensively too.
Right.
But without Caleb Foster, they don't have a ton of shooting on this team. They're not very deep, like you guys are talking about with the two guys being
Exactly.
injured. What happens when Isaiah Evans goes 1 for 9 from three and
They're going to
two
have
for
a
11
they're
from
going
the
to have an
field?
off shooting
What
night.
then? They're only going to score
Exactly.
70 points. Are they going to, Kansas going to score 75 or St. John score 72? That's what I'm worried about.
I think Duke will
I
have an
love
off shooting
I
night.
love Duke's defense. The way they shut people down. They're
Me
not going to
too.
need to score a ton to advance. And
Yeah.
so Caden Boozer is really stepping into the role well. I think it's my understanding that out of the two guys that are hurt, at least one of them's coming back, if not both.
I looked. Ngongba's day to day, and Foster's still unforeseeable right now.
Yeah, I'm not sure which one was coming back, but I think they might have both of them at some point in the tournament, and one of them will be back for the whole tournament. So
Mhm.
their injury situation's not as dire as it is for the ACC tournament it was.
Yeah.
But I just think the amount of defensive stats that scream powerful defense, coupled with their ability to score from different areas, and the fact that you have both boozers, you know,
I think that they have the toughest road to the Final Four, and I think that they're going to get bit along the way. They're going to have a really bad shooting night, and they're going to lose by 2 points. You know.
I don't think their road is
So,
tougher. I think their bracket is tough, but they don't have to play everyone in their bracket. They just have to advance
yeah.
past a couple of
All
people.
right. So I've got Michigan State.
There's a lot of collateral damage going on over in their bracket that has nothing to do with them.
So I've got Michigan State out of that region. You've got Duke. Cole, who do you have out of that region?
I had Michigan State coming out as well as of right now.
Okay. Let's take a look at the South. I've got Florida winning their first round game. I've got Clemson beating Iowa. I really think Clemson had a great season. They did struggle a little bit at the end of the year, but I like the way they play basketball. And I think that they're tournament ready. I love Vanderbilt and the season that they had. I think McNeese is going to be a little bit overmatched there with an SEC team. I like Nebraska to get their first ever win in the NCAA tournament against Troy. I do like Carolina to pull it out against VCU, but I think it's going to be a really close game, and I've got that as an upset alert, major upset alert. Would not be
The
shocked at all
6-11.
if VCU wins that game. I would not be surprised. Illinois, I've got winning pretty handily against UPenn. That's going to be very overmatched.
Hmm.
I've got A&M squeaking one out against St. Mary's, but as we talked about, they have a couple guys banged up right now. They should win against St. Mary's, the SEC team, but this is another major upset alert for me, and we'll see what happens. And I've got Houston winning easily against Idaho.
Hey, what happened to Yale? I thought they were getting in.
Yeah,
They lost.
they lost to
They
Penn
lost to
today. I
Penn.
saw that too when I
Yeah.
was looking at the brackets. They had made the tournament. I think they'd won the Ivy last 3 of the last 5 years, something like that. They were
Yeah.
supposed to get him for sure, but
They
Penn
lost to
upset them
Penn.
today.
They lost to Penn
I
today,
know, but I thought they were going no matter what.
and the star
Not
of the
necessarily.
game, the star of the game for Penn was a guy named T.J. Power. He used to play for the Virginia Cavaliers,
He played for
and
Duke and Virginia.
he's played
Oh, I didn't know
unbelievable this
that.
year for Penn.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's a
Wow.
wahoo
Okay.
yeah.
and carried them into the tournament. So where am I going wrong so far, guys, on the first round here?
I like Iowa over Clemson. I don't really believe in this Clemson team. This is also gonna be fun because both these teams
Agreed.
play a ton of defense. Like first to 60 is gonna win this game, which is gonna be kind of interesting to watch. Um, I I really like McNeese. They are second in turnovers forced in the entire nation and first in turnover margin in the nation. So they just absolutely are constantly turning the ball over, forcing the other team to turn it over. I think that might be able to beat out Vanderbilt, but I like Vanderbilt a decent bit, so I think they probably sneak out of that game just barely. And I like St. Mary's to beat Texas A&M, but I like everything else you have on here. VCU is gonna be a tough out for Carolina too. They're pretty hungry right now, but
And
Carolina should take care of business.
what's interesting is the games you mentioned as some of your upsets were ones that I really struggled with. So yeah, I think we all kind of agree generally on some of the
Yeah, I have
tougher.
St. Mary's beating A&M,
Okay.
Illinois beating Pitt. I do have Carolina advancing.
Hmm.
Um, they
Me
got a
too.
lot of good players. I mean, yeah, they're gonna miss
But I'm going to be watching that Carolina game very carefully, and I think that
yeah.
if VCU comes out with a win, I'm not going to be shocked. It'll be actually not surprising at
It
all.
won't be shocking. I'd be shocked if it wasn't a great game,
Yeah.
Mm.
down to the wire kind of thing.
The way
Yeah.
I've
VCU's been
got
playing.
I've got Iowa beating Clemson
So
and
to finish up my
Florida.
bracket, I've got Florida beating Clemson. I've got Nebraska beating Vanderbilt. I think they get their second win in the NCAA tournament. I think Vanderbilt finally goes down. I
I
like
agree
the
with that.
Big Ten brand of basketball. I've got Florida blowing Nebraska off the floor by about 25 points. I got Carolina knocking off Illinois. I think that if they get past VCU, I think they might kind of get rolling a little bit. They've got a lot of talent on that team. And I've got Houston being A&M, and then I've got Houston winning fairly comfortably against Carolina. And then I've got Florida, Houston playing for the final of the region, and Florida taking it barely. I think it'll be a really great game, like 80-77 type game. So, guys, what do you think about South overall?
I think the winner of Vanderbilt McNeese is going to beat Nebraska. So I have Vanderbilt. Actually, you have Nebraska beating Vanderbilt. I think the winner of that team is going to beat Nebraska, and I think Illinois is going to take care of North Carolina or VCU. However, I don't think Illinois. I think they're going to be overmatched when it comes to Houston, and I agree with you that this is going to be 1-2 at the end, where it's going to be Houston and Florida playing against each other for the
I
Elite Eight
agree.
matchup.
Okay, very cool. Do you have Florida winning or Houston winning?
I'm not sure. I think I have Florida. Let me take a look. Yeah, I have Florida matching it. Just
Okay.
barely though. It can be defense. They're going to slow Houston's going to slow the game down a lot, but I think Florida's going to overmatch them, oversize them a little bit.
I think they're just a little too tall for Houston. That's what I think. Robbie, who do you have coming out of this region?
Sweet 16, I have Florida against Nebraska, um, Illinois against Houston, and I have Houston advancing and Florida advancing, and I have Houston going to the Final Four.
Houston. Okay. All right. So we have two different teams already, Robbie, in the East and the South.
Yep.
Pretty interesting. Let's take a look up here at the West. We got Arizona winning comfortably. I've got Villanova winning, but getting a scare out of Utah State. Matter of fact, they may be down a little bit late because Utah State's an awfully good team, but I think Villanova will find a way to win. High Point upsetting Wisconsin for the biggest upset of the Thursday. I've got Arkansas beating Hawaii and Arkansas coming off a high, winning the SEC championship game. They're playing really, really well right now. I've got BYU beating the winner of the Texas NC State game. I think that'll be NC State in that game, and I think BYU may be just a little too much for NC State, maybe by 2 or 3 points. But I do think BYU is a little bit of a wounded animal right now, so I think NC State will have a really good shot in that game. I've got Gonzaga beating Kennesaw State. I've got Miami winning their first round game against Missouri. I think they'll grind them down with their athletic style. And I've got Purdue obviously winning very comfortably against Queens, 20 points plus in that one. What do you guys think about my first round picks here?
I agree with all these. I have NC State going to the Sweet 16 in my initial bracket, so I might need to change that a little bit later. But I agree with everything else you had on here. I like Miami to beat Missouri. I like High Point, and I think actually I took Utah State. I'm not 100% in love with this Villanova team either. They do look
Yeah.
good, but they look inconsistent, and I think
Well,
Utah State is hungry right now.
it's funny how every time you say that, you look back at what I said, and which is this was the toughest one for me to pick, the 8-9 game, because Utah State is very good, and I won't be shocked if they win this game.
I have Utah State in my bracket.
Yeah. I just think Villanova is going to find a way to win this game, but I think Utah State may be leading very late in the game, and it may be shocking, but I think Villanova will pull it out. So finish out my bracket. Arizona beats Villanova. Arkansas beats High Point. I think Arkansas is a sneaky good team. They've got like Final Four capability. They're playing that well. Gonzaga beats BYU, and I've got Purdue beating Miami pretty handily. I think they're playing really well right now. I've got Purdue beating Gonzaga, and then I've got Arizona beating Arkansas, and I have Arizona winning the region by beating Purdue, the 1 and 2 seeds. I think that's gonna be a really great game. So where did I go wrong, guys?
For me, this is where my bracket goes off the rails, and I think I'm going to change this, but I have NC State and Miami coming out of this or in the Sweet 16. So I have the 11 seed and the 7 seed. In reality, I'll probably change it to Gonzaga and then them beating Purdue if I had to guess. But I like Miami. I think they could beat Purdue. And I think BYU is very vulnerable. And I think if it is NC State to beat them, I think it'll be Gonzaga.
I think if
Other than that, though, I agree. I
BYU,
like Arizona. I like Arkansas, and I think it'll be Arizona and somebody else in the lead eight.
I think if BYU was fully healthy, I'd pick them against Gonzaga here. But I just think BYU doesn't have a lot around their main player right now. So I'm picking Gonzaga. They're a tournament test, and they have one of the best coaches in basketball. So
I
Robbie,
picked BYU. I picked BYU to beat Gonzaga. I don't love that, but I just feel like they have enough players to pull it off. I'm not super impressed with Gonzaga this year. Not sure why really, but everything
do
else I have is the same. And
you
then
have
the
Arizona coming out?
I have Arizona coming out and beating Arkansas, and I have BYU losing to Purdue in the Sweet 16. And the Elite Eight, I have Arizona against Purdue, and I have Arizona advancing.
Yeah. Okay. So we're pretty close.
Yeah, it's really
Well,
close.
well, Cole, we'll look forward to seeing your revised bracket. That'll be
That's
fun.
all right.
So final region to talk about here, guys. We've got Michigan beating UMBC or Howard. It'll probably be UMBC. I've got UMBC winning that game. I've got Georgia beating St. Louis in one of the toughest games to pick. Like I said before, that's going to be a really, really tough matchup.
Mhm.
Won't be surprised if St. Louis wins it, but I think Georgia will pull it off. I've got Akron upsetting Texas Tech, who are kind of limping right now. They've lost a couple players recently, so they're having a little bit of an injury situation. I like the way Akron's playing a lot, so I've got them winning that game. I've got Alabama blowing Hofstra off the floor, and Alabama's one of my sneaky teams I'm watching very closely with their very high scoring, high caliber offense. I've got Tennessee beating the winner of the SMU game, which I think is going to be SMU against Miami, Ohio. I've got Virginia beating Wright State. I've got Kentucky against Santa Clara. That's going to be a great game, too, by the way. And I like Iowa State comfortably against Tennessee State. So, what do you guys think about this first round?
I want to show some respect to the Hofstra Pride or whatever the Hofstra is. I can't remember what
Yeah.
the Bison.
Yep.
Is it Pride?
I think it's the Pride. Yeah.
Okay.
Hofstra Pride.
I
Pride,
want to
yeah,
show
they're
some
called
respect
Pride.
to the Coastal Athletic Conference in Hofstra. I think they have a good chance to be up on Alabama. They play a very slow game. They play defensive minded,
Mhm.
which is the opposite of Alabama. So I think if it is a slow game, they have a chance to be up for a little while. I still have Bama winning that, but I think it will be closer than you're imagining. I also like the Zips. Akron is really good. They got a really good guard. Texas Tech is injured, so I think they should win that game. That'll
Mhm.
probably be a pretty heavily picked upset if I had to guess. I have St. Louis beating Georgia, but I definitely could see it going the other way around.
Yep. Mhm.
And I agree with everything else. I think Kentucky should take care of Santa Clara, and I don't think either of the games will be all that close, to be honest. Virginia should take care of Wright State. SMU or Miami, Ohio, I'm assuming it's going to be SMU, probably cannot keep up with Tennessee either.
I agree. And the only reason I'm picking SMU over Miami of Ohio, we know that they haven't played anybody. I think SMU is a tournament tested team in the ACC, even though they barely got in. They're a pretty good team. I mean, I know Virginia played them this year, and I was pretty impressed. Robbie, what do you think of this first round compared to your bracket?
My bracket, I have UMBC advancing and Michigan beating them. I have St. Louis beating Georgia.
Hmm.
I have Texas Tech beating Akron, but that's where it ends for them because the injury. to Toppin. Alabama beating Hofstra. SMU beating Tennessee.
Interesting.
That's an
Okay.
upset. Yeah.
Okay.
I think Tennessee's vulnerable.
Yeah, maybe.
I have Virginia beating Wright State, Santa Clara beating Kentucky, and Iowa State beating Tennessee State.
Okay.
Then I have Iowa State beating Santa Clara, Virginia beating SMU. I have SMU beating Tennessee. I have Alabama beating Texas Tech, Michigan beating St. Louis, and then Michigan beating Alabama, Virginia beating Iowa State, and then Michigan beating Virginia.
Okay. So everything the same for me, except that I've got Michigan beating Georgia and then Michigan losing to Alabama in a huge upset, one of the biggest of the tournament. So I've got Alabama coming up against Virginia, and I have Alabama beating us in a heartbreaking fashion with their incredible scoring clip and us being unable to stop them. So that's basically what I've got coming out of this region is Alabama.
Mm.
What about you, Cole?
This one for me is pretty chalky. I actually just switched Kentucky with Iowa State. I had Kentucky winning originally, but I just don't love this Kentucky team, especially come March. I'm not super in love with Iowa State either. I'll talk more about them a little bit, closer to it. I think they're a really good defense and they're shooting really well from three, but I think they're shooting over their head. I don't think they're as good of a shooting team.
Mm-hmm.
Besides the Momcilovic or whatever that guy's name is, he is fantastic from three. But besides him, I don't love their three-point shooting. I think they're going to miss a lot of shots when it comes time to actually needing to hit. But I have 1 through 4 making it. I have Iowa State taking care of business, losing to Virginia. I think Virginia will make the Elite Eights. Michigan will beat Alabama if it's still Alabama there. I'm not huge on Alabama either. And I think Michigan beats Virginia in a pretty hard fought game. Michigan moves on for me.
Okay. So you both have Michigan beating Virginia in the Elite Eight. I've got Alabama beating Virginia in the Elite Eight. So if we get to Elite Eight, I'll be pretty excited. That'd be a great run for our team. Obviously, if we get Final Four, that's dream scenario. All right, so here, let's finish it off for the Final Four. I've got Michigan State, Florida on one side in a fantastic game that will be must-see TV, and I've got Florida coming out on top on that one. I just think Florida's playing that well right now. And then I've got Arizona beating Alabama relatively comfortably. I think that they're a much better team. They're going to outclass them in that game. So I've got a Florida Arizona final, and I've got Arizona picking up the first title for a Western team in 32 years, which is pretty remarkable if you think about it. We haven't had a Western champion in a long time. And I've got this being a really fantastic game, 81-76, with Arizona winning the whole thing. So where am I going wrong on the Final Four, guys?
I like Michigan to beat Arizona. Like I said, I like Michigan a lot. I know they have not looked quite as good. They ended up losing Purdue today, but I'm kind of a believer in teams are allowed to lose in their conference tournament and use that as motivation to do better in the NCAA tournament, which is why
Possible.
I'm
Yeah.
feeling Michigan pretty well in this situation. Plus Arizona, like I said, if they feel free to prove me wrong, Wildcats about the three-point shooting thing, but I need to see it in today's modern college basketball. I need to see a team that doesn't shoot like they don't have success in March Madness and get very far in this tournament. They get a lot of free throws, they do a lot of work inside. It looks really good right now. I need to see it work before I can believe in it. And I also have Michigan State and Florida. I have Florida beat Michigan State in really hard fought, probably a high scoring game to be honest, where it's just Michigan State is trying to get the boards, but they're just slightly too small to go compete against Florida.
I agree.
And I have Michigan winning the entire thing, but I could definitely see Florida winning it too, going back to back.
Interesting. Robbie?
Yeah, so I have Michigan against Arizona, and I have Arizona winning that one. And I have Duke against Houston, and I have Houston winning that one. So I have
Okay.
Houston against Arizona in the finals,
Mm-hmm.
and I have Arizona winning the whole thing.
Okay. Very
They
good.
they shoot well from three, they just don't shoot often,
Yeah.
36%. And I think I don't think you win the tournament by shooting threes. I think you can add to the damage, but you've got to win in other ways. You got to play defense. You got to keep the other team from doing what they do well.
You
That,
know what?
take
They They do everything well, and Florida does everything well. That's why I got the two of them in the final. I
Yeah.
really believe these two teams do everything well. They rebound well. They play defense well. They run the court well. They
think
scrap for the ball. They get the 50-50 balls well. They have active hands.
the
They have,
pressure of the tournament makes it so that if when you're counting on 3-point play, it it fails you.
yeah,
And I think you have to be able to go inside when it's not working, and you got to be able to run and gun. You got to be able to win other ways because the pressure of the tournament is so crazy that it can throw you out of your normal success patterns. And if hitting a lot of threes is your norm, I think you're losing in this tournament.
100% true.
That doesn't mean that there's not stretches where you're hitting threes. But there's also gonna be stretches where you're not. And if you're a 3-point shooting team, I don't think you win the national title.
No, I definitely agree with that. I want to say also, Robbie, looking at your Final Four, is that I feel like the teams. I don't know if their stats prove this. I haven't looked too deeply into it yet, but depth is a really big thing that I feel like matters when it comes time to the last games of the year. I
Yeah,
really like Arizona's depth a lot. I have a
I
lot
do
of
too.
questions about Houston's depth and Duke's depth if the guys don't come back. I love Arizona's depth. Florida's pretty deep, at least with their size. Michigan is fairly deep as well. They are pretty good, but Houston, past their starting five, I have questions, and I don't love some guys off Duke's bench if those two guys don't get healthy. So I really do like Arizona when it comes to that this late
We
into
were
the year.
we were talking about the Virginia Duke game before the game happened, and the reason Rob and I thought Virginia had a chance is because of the depth. Virginia
Yeah.
rotates 14 guys in and out,
They keep
and
throwing guys at you, and
Duke,
actually they get better when their bench comes in.
and
They
Duke
actually improve.
Duke rotates 9, and one of those 9 is hurt right now. So they're just incredibly thin. They don't have a lot of subbing in and out. Now the players they do have are fantastic, but I just think it's going to hurt Duke in the long run in this
I think
tournament.
Duke's going to be plenty. I think they're fine. I think the depth of all four, in my opinion, the depth of the final four teams is one of their strengths. And I have Duke, Arizona, Michigan, and Houston. I think Houston's got
But
decent
Duke,
depth.
but Duke
It's
very
not the
much
best.
does. Duke very much does what the old Virginia teams under Tony Bennett does, which is they rely on way too few players and they don't rotate in and out. I mean, Virginia puts their second team in, and their second team is better than almost all the other ACC teams' first teams. So
That's the NIL too about it, is that Duke is
yeah,
so busy
Yeah,
paying guys like Cameron Boozer, Isaiah Evans, and Mgongba
yeah,
coming in, just really,
they're
really
not
top
deep.
young guys coming in. They can't afford to pay their ninth guy as much as somebody like a Michigan would, per se, or
yeah.
Arizona.
I like
I,
Michigan's
I
depth. I
think
like
that
Florida's depth. I like all those teams' depth, and I think that's why. I mean,
I
even
think
Houston.
Duke's injuries have helped them because it's forced them to play these really good players that are sitting and watching patiently. And
Mhm.
it's made them take roles where they can contribute. And it came at all the right time. Caden Boozer is a really good player. And I don't think he was really getting his due this year
Mhm.
until there was that injury. So I think
Yeah,
that they're deeper now because of the injuries.
yeah.
Because I think they're going to get those guys back.
Well, guys, drop us a comment. Drop a comment to Cole, to Rob, myself. Tell us about your bracket. Who do you think is going to be in the Final Four? Who do you think is going to win it? And we hope you guys have a fantastic tournament. I know we're going to really enjoy it. We will be coming back to you with some more updates. And Cole, tell us about some of these detailed breakdowns you've got coming up on your podcast.
Yeah, so I'm not 100% sure what's going on. The Open Throne podcast, please follow me on YouTube as well. And I'm not 100% sure what I'll be doing yet. I have plans to, if not do an entire tournament breakdown, then go based on each region because I think there is enough, content to really dive deep into each region.
Yeah.
Um, Possibly doing a first four breakdown as well, depending on how that goes. But I'm not 100% sure yet. They may just be mostly an NC State episode. And I'm also potentially planning on doing NC State kind of complaint episode about them not getting, at large bid per se to get, without not making the first four. So they got a bunch of stuff coming up. Gonna be talking about consistently each round, like you guys are planning on doing as well. Reviews, recaps of each
Yeah.
round as the weekend goes across. NBA playoffs coming up pretty well, pretty soon as well. Big NBA guys, I'm really looking forward to talking about that coming at the end of the season and previews for the NBA playoffs coming up right after March Madness.
That's fantastic.
Nice.
Well, we'll
I
be
think you
looking
could
for
do
what you guys bring.
I think you could do a whole episode on first four in and first four out.
You could,
I'm serious.
100%.
Yeah,
We're
there'd be a
excited to
lot of
see what Cole's bringing to the Open Throne podcast. We'll be watching. I'll put
we'll be watching
link
for sure.
I'll put a link to the channel down below so everybody can get to it. And guys, thanks so much for watching us tonight. We wanted to give you this instant reaction. Again, we haven't had a lot of time to analyze it, just like you haven't, but we really wanted to bring it to you right away. We thought it'd be exciting to do so. So thanks for joining us tonight, and please like and subscribe like always. And Cole, thanks so much for joining us.
Of course,
Thanks
yeah.
for
As
coming
always,
on,
thanks
Cole.
again for having me on. Love talking to you guys. Great content you guys have as always.
Guys, enjoy the basketball
Nice.
this week. We'll talk to you soon on the Sports Guys. Have a good one.
See you guys. Thanks for joining us.